Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the HYSKY Pod. I'm Danielle McLean. I'm here with Dabin Kim, Drea Hickman,
Hello.
and Rishav Shrestha, and we are the HYSKY team. This is our very first episode. So before we jump into all the hydrogen and hydrogen aviation stuff, we wanted to kind of tell you all about how we met. I'm going to start with Drea because I've known her the longest. Drea and I actually met when I was in high school. We worked at a sporting goods store together. Then we kind of went separate ways, but we've been best friends ever since. And Drea, she's got a law degree. She was involved in the nonprofit space for a really long time. And we never really thought that we'd be working on aviation together, but somehow our interests converged to hydrogen aviation. And so I couldn't be happier to have her here. So welcome, Dre, to the show. Did you want to say anything? Unmute. We might as well just all stay unmuted the whole time. I think it's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just said 30 years. 30 years.
30 years. Wow. I feel super old. Well, it's been a great 30 years, and I'm so happy to have you.
Yeah.
And so let's see. So next, I'll introduce Rishav. I'm introducing people in the order that I've met them. Rishav and I met through another organization that we were part of that was working on electric aircraft. And we started talking about startup funding. Rishav is a CEO of what I call the only true flying car. And that's all I can really say about it because he's in stealth mode. But it's a fantastic company and product, and I'm so excited. And we just shared so many things in common. I kind of feel like he's like my brother from another mother. We've known each other for, I think, going on like 3 years now. It's went by really fast. But he's just also a medical doctor, startup founder of a few things, and just a really humble guy. But one of the smartest people I know. Also, Drea, also one of the smartest people I know. And also Dabin is too. So I tend to really find smart people. Rishav, did you want to say hi?
Yeah, thanks so much for that introduction, Danielle. And the feelings mutual and reciprocated. You know, I feel the same about you. It's like I've known you for a really long time, and we're good friends. We became very good friends very quickly. So the same with Drea, and just got to meet Dabin. But yeah, I think we're a good team. Like you said, I'm an eVTOL developer, not really an aerospace guy, but these days nobody needs to be from the same background that they're from to make things. So and HYSKY and hydrogen, this is what we love to do. So yeah, I'm really excited for the podcast.
Thank you, Rishav, and welcome. We're so happy to have you. And then next, I'm going to introduce Dabin Kim, and this is Dabin and I's meeting is the funniest. And so about a year and a half or so ago, I didn't have time. I needed an H2 eVTOL. For those of you that don't know what eVTOL means, okay, H2 hydrogen, obviously, and then eVTOL, electric vertical takeoff and landing. I needed a graphic for something that I was working on. I didn't have time to do my own CAD. And I didn't really have the funding to pay somebody to develop the CAD at the time. And so I'm looking on like Shutterstock and everywhere online, trying to find an H2 eVTOL that actually looked like a good design, right? And I stumbled, and so I started looking on GrabCAD, and I had a membership to GrabCAD from college. And I look on GrabCAD and I find, matter of fact, I'm just going to pull it up because I find this design and I'm like, oh my God, this is perfect. And so I tried to find out who the designer was, and I actually went through like the process that they say to get in touch. And I don't know what happened, but it never went through. And so since I couldn't get a hold of the creator, I just said, well, I'm just going to go ahead and use it. And I hope they don't get too mad at me, and maybe they'll see us using it and they'll reach out. And that's exactly what happened. So like a year later, I get this email literally just like a few weeks ago from Dabin, like, hey, that's my work and I would like credit for it. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to find you. And so we finally connected, and he actually came on board. I mean, look how amazing these are. And he actually won second place in a design competition. So Dabin, did you want to say hi?
Oh, yes. Hello, everyone. And well, thank you for that introduction again. I mean, yeah, it was the word we used, I guess, was serendipity, just sheer luck, pretty much. And well, like what I can say, I'm very happy to be part of the team. It was quite, like, how should I say, the coincidence, but we're here. That's all that matters.
Yep, exactly. And it's like what I wasn't expecting. Now I knew I loved your design, but what I wasn't expecting is for you to like fit with our team so perfectly. And we had that meeting. I'm like, oh my gosh, you got to join us because like you're one of us. And I don't know what makes one of us. I feel like none of us really have anything in common, and that's what we have in common. But we all like hydrogen aviation. I think that's the one thing we have in common. But we're all, in fact, let's see, I'm in Texas, Drea is in Oklahoma, Rishav is in Nepal, and Dabin's in South Korea. How cool is that we can come together almost every day and have these amazing meetings and conversations? So that's just a little bit about our team. I'm honored and grateful to be surrounded by such amazing people. And so, yes, thank you all again for being here on episode 1 of the HYSKY Pod. And so we figured to sort of jump off this podcast, we would talk about the hydrogen colors. And so Dabin found this article, and I guess the EU is working to define what makes hydrogen green. And Dabin, do you want to just kind of summarize this article and then sort of like, let's talk about the colors and like what they all mean?
Right. So one of hydrogen's main challenges right now is image, and with that comes a lot of, well, we can call it branding. Let's just say branding for now. I mean, hydrogen itself might just be, like an element, the most basic element, the building block of the universe, so to say. But the way hydrogen is produced matters, and with that, different strands of hydrogen production have gotten their own brand or color, so to say. We'll get to that in more detail a bit later, but first, let me just get out of the way. Green hydrogen, as of now, is kind of like the holy grail. Like hydrogen created from, carbon-free, means, usually through like electrolysis of water. And so it's got a lot, it's very like strongly connected with the renewable energy industry, just hydrogen that you don't need to feel bad about, hydrogen that is very environmentally conscious. And given that our team's mission is to create, emissions-free, electric aviation using hydrogen, I mean, this, green hydrogen is also a very big priority, needless to say. Recently, the European Union had published that they are going to temporarily, so by temporarily, I mean by about until 2028, change what green hydrogen means. And this is the gist of the article. So before, green hydrogen, as I said, needs to be emissions free, made from completely renewable sources, clean all the way through. However, that is quite the challenge, and the EU has, well, for lack of a better word, decided to be a bit more pragmatic about it. So not completely emissions free, but as long as the means, the methods used to make that hydrogen is low carbon, for example, as mentioned in the article, nuclear electricity, then it will be seen as green hydrogen. And with that, you get a lot of, benefits across the board. As I said, this is a temporary measure. They're going to start, roll it back so that by 2028, companies willing to work with hydrogen will have to come up with their own provisions for renewable energy sources to cover their hydrogen production as well in order to remain green. So just hydrogen, it's an exciting field for sure, but it will also come up as challenges. And well, if what are challenges if they're not exciting? So
Do you
here we
think
are.
that they're kind of sort of changing this definition, and I guess what's significant about 2028 did they say, but do you think they're changing the definition to maybe help lower the cost, or maybe
I would definitely say so. Yes.
Mhm.
Like
I think.
cost is. Hmm? Yes,
Sorry.
Rishav?
Go ahead. No, sorry. I just wanted to also ask your opinion. Is this related to the conflict that's happening in the Russia-Ukraine region? Because EU just basically restarted their coal plants. They were all doing COP26, and they were like, "Nah, we gotta do all renewables." And all of a sudden, they restarted their coal plants. They're telling everybody in the global south that you are sinners for using coal, but now they're just went back to coal. So do you think that's another reason?
I think both Danielle and Rishav, you know, have, like are, reaching at like different aspects of the bigger picture. We don't know for sure. I mean, there's a lot of geopolitics involved in this decision. I would assume so. At the same time, cost is definitely an issue, not just for hydrogen, but for literally every industry out there. And the truth is, renewable energy is just per kilowatt basis, just a lot more expensive than fossil fuels, even nowadays. So to kind of take a more lenient approach towards the whole green hydrogen label, I think this
Right.
is on hand just lowering the threshold, lowering that boundary, making it more accessible, making hydrogen a more enticing option for a lot more companies out there, while at the same time, as Rishav mentioned, kind of finding like a solution to any other potential geopolitical conflicts that might create similar energy crises in the future.
And I,
So, I
for
mean,
one,
hydrogen,
am sorry, go ahead, Dabin.
yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, it is a lot more intrinsically linked with our daily lives than people would, initially assume.
Yeah,
Right.
I for one am excited to see nuclear included in that definition. This is such an interesting, I guess, debate or discussion around, like, is nuclear renewable? It's not. But there was a TED talk, and I don't remember the guy's name that did it. It really opened my eyes to nuclear. I mean, I think we all know the powers of nuclear, or at least have some sort of idea of like how huge it is, how powerful, but it's not renewable in the sense where we think about wind and solar. However, it's the only power source that the emissions can be contained. So yes, you have radioactive waste, but you can contain that, versus like with fossil fuels, it's all just going out into the atmosphere. So I thought that was interesting, because if that's the case, then producing hydrogen with nuclear, I mean, the possibilities for nuclear are endless. So yeah, I'm excited to see that, because I didn't want us to like pigeonhole ourselves where now we have to make, hydrogen with solar panels, or with electrolysis powered by solar panels or wind turbines. I didn't want us to pigeonhole us to that, because like, what if something else more powerful comes out to make hydrogen? And I always, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking that more powerful thing would be nuclear. So I'm glad that they added it. That's sort of my take on it. I think it's a good thing overall.
Yeah, and I think for renewables, like I love nuclear myself because um actually it's fear mongering that, and there's also industry interest. Fossil fuel producers wanted their merchandise to be sold, and also nuclear is very expensive. The capital expense is very high to roll it out for safety, but then it's actually very, in a layman's term, energy dense. in the area that you use for a nuclear plant, you can generate whatever you can do over a continent for solar, right? People I think are starting to kind of have a rethink on why they should use nuclear, and there are actually, we have the seas and the oceans that can be used for other kinds of renewable energy. So there's quite a lot of energy that we can harvest.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing you said, the fear mongering thing. I feel like nuclear and hydrogen, they share this. Poor hydrogen got a bad reputation with the Hindenburg, even though we've used hydrogen for decades and it's perfectly safe. It's just as safe as any other gas that we're used to working with. But for some reason, when we think of hydrogen in the sky, we think of things blowing up, and that's just not the case. In fact, there were many flights successful before Hindenburg and after, that just didn't resonate like the Hindenburg did. And then, of course, nuclear, Chernobyl. So we have these events that sort of shape our thinking, but there's so many more examples of how it's beneficial and helpful. And it's funny because, people die in car wrecks all the time, every day. And we're just like totally numb to it. But then we use like these couple of disasters, and yes, they were disasters and unfortunate events, but we shouldn't, just discount them because we are, numb and normalized with car wrecks and other things happening that are dangerous. So, yeah. Okay, so let's just kind of talk. We sort of talked about the colors of the Dabin said before we started recording, what did you say? The hydrogen pride flag?
Oh yeah, so like there was this talk about how hydrogen is adding a new color seemingly every week, and it's like hydrogen is getting its own pride flag. So yay.
I love it. That's so great. I would like a hydrogen pride flag. That's funny. And so, we'll just kind of go through these, because a lot of people don't really understand. I'll just say the simplest way to explain good hydrogen versus bad hydrogen, or green versus pollutive, is does it release emissions when you're creating it or using it? And this is just talking about the creation of it, by the way. The use of it is a topic for another podcast in the future. But so gray, it uses natural gas reforming without carbon capture, usage, and storage. So what that means is, and somebody else can take a stab at explaining this if they want to. Does anyone else want to? I'll keep going unless someone else goes. Okay, so what it just means that you're basically reforming the natural gas, and carbon capture is like there's carbon released into the atmosphere, and you can capture that. And so it's more sustainable if you capture that, right? It's more green. So gray is without carbon capture. So you've got some emissions. Brown is just like it says, doing it with coal. Blue is the same as gray, except you are capturing that carbon. Green is like we talked about earlier, which is, you have your water, you put basically a current into that water, and you split the, water's H2O, you split the water and you split the hydrogen and the oxygen, but something's got to power that current. And so this is talking about that power coming from, let's say, solar or wind turbines, renewable electricity. Pink, which is what we were just talking about, is the nuclear. I'm very interested in that. Turquoise, methane. I'm also very interested in this one. We'll talk more about that in a future episode. And yellow, this one's a little bit confusing because it sounds almost exactly like green. So yeah, I don't really know why yellow and green are their own separate ones, but then orange is, which also kind of sounds like yellow and orange are subsets of green, which I think is what Rishav said earlier. So that's the hydrogen pride flag. And so
yeah, I mean
yeah, go
Danielle,
ahead.
does it, the thing is, so it probably is the we can define it at a simpler level with CCUS and without CCUS. That's what I would think. So is everything from, starting from blue onward, are they all with CCUS with carbon
Oh,
capture?
if you're talking about like onward, like below on the chart,
Yeah, blue, and all the way down to
well,
orange.
green,
Are
you
they
don't
all?
have any carbon, so you don't need to capture it.
Hmm.
And then pink, you wouldn't either.
Hmm.
Turquoise, you would. So yeah, we
Okay.
probably could make a better version of this chart actually with that,
Yeah,
because I like that thinking.
yeah, and then the other thing is that a lot of times we're talking about electrolyzers, and if they are chemical electrolyzers, can we say that they're green? How green are they? I mean, otherwise, if we're just using current electricity to produce electricity, then that's obviously there's no question about it. But if you use a chemical electrolyzer, is it green enough to be so, or does it go back to blue or brown, or I don't know.
Yeah,
And
that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. That's a very good question. Something
And I
to
guess that's what the EU article we just looked at helps answer. So yes, technically green will have to be completely like electrolysis power for renewable and electricity solely. But
mm,
like the article is basically saying the EU is going to include pink into
hmm,
green as well. And
got it.
furthermore, be a bit more lenient with green so that as long as it's not like 100% like coal powered, if you generate hydrogen for electrolysis, you can call it green hydrogen until, well, 2028. It's a 5 year
yeah.
buffer.
Is that when the definition will come out?
I think that's when they're going to change their policy again so that, like green hydrogen companies will actually have to build renewable energy sources to produce the hydrogen they use.
I see. When did they say the definitions would? Oh, they've already done
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Mhm.
The commission rules for green hydrogen adopted on Friday evening. Okay, cool. So interesting. From 2028, as production starts to scale up, hydrogen
Yeah, I think.
projects will need to add additional renewables to the local grid to match their demand. This will help to avoid renewables being diverted from the grid and putting pressure on household and business energy bills. Okay, cool.
It
Got
also
it.
matches the 2027 end of 2027 deadline for EU to be independent of Russian energy. So,
Mm,
I guess they're all being very pragmatic, which is kind of like, and not being idealistic. I think that's pretty good because this will help drive down the cost of hydrogen. Right now it's like $10, still $10 per kg, and we really needed to go down to $1 or
yeah,
lower.
yeah. And it really is going to be a challenge to get to that $1. It's a challenging number to hit, but if we can, I mean, even if we can get close to it, that's just going to be a game changer. And so,
Hmm.
we've been talking about all these different ways to produce hydrogen. And the reason why it's so interesting that the EU has defined what's green hydrogen, I'm definitely going to have to go in and read that, because Drea has been finding all of these really cool ways to make hydrogen that sound green. Drea, do you want to kind of just give us a summary of this article that you found on researchers producing hydrogen from seawater at almost
Okay.
100% efficiency?
Okay. Yeah, it seems very simple, and the way they explain it, and it seems that we can now use untreated seawater, whereas before we always would have to go through a desalination process to make sure that it didn't have all the yuck in it, and we had to use either perfectly clean, like our drinking water, to extract the hydrogen.
Too frozen.
Or we would have to desalinate, which is very expensive process. I've done that my entire life. That to me when I didn't understand why I use all this water now. The seawater can be used in the electrolysis process in extracting the hydrogen, which is really a game changer. So when we use it in that form, we won't have to be taking from our feedstock basically. And that was really brilliant
Wow.
at a university in Australia came up with that recently. So I'm following that
Wow.
really closely because I think that that's going to be a game changer as well, and in our production options because we have so many coming out, which is brilliant.
Yeah, this is so interesting. And we had lost connection at the beginning of what you were saying, but I think I heard most of it
Sorry.
towards the end. I think we got the gist of it. So are they able to basically they're able to do electrolysis on seawater without having to desalinate it first? And so
Yeah.
when I'm wondering, is there a byproduct to that?
The catalyst that they've used.
Mm-hmm.
They changed the catalyst that they use.
Ah.
And I'm sorry, what did you say?
No, go ahead.
I am having connection problems. Sorry today.
No, it's okay. So, like when we were talking about earlier, when you separate we might have lost Drea. When we separate the hydrogen and the oxygen, right, from with the current, well, where does the salt go?
Probably
what?
drained. Probably is drained.
What?
Yeah, I mean it's like probably the salt. It can I haven't read this article, but maybe they have a separation process. A physical separation. I don't know. Drea knows this better.
Changing the catalyst that they use. It was I can't remember exactly. It's Lewis acid coating on the catalyst, and that's how they're able to use it without.
What in the world is Lewis acid? Have any of you heard of that before? I've never heard of that in my life.
I had heard it before this.
Free oxide.
Okay, cool.
Yes.
Yeah, I heard the term from my high school chemistry.
You have heard it in chemistry?
Yeah. There's Lewis acid and Lewis base. It's but I don't remember anymore. It has to do with the ionization potential of the compound.
Mm-hmm.
So they, I vaguely remember it that some of them can ionize rapidly. So if they ionize rapidly as positive ions, they become anionic and they become basic. If I'm not wrong, so that would be a Lewis base. And if they,
I remember Lewis. Okay, yeah. Gosh, you're bringing me back to Chem 1.
Yeah,
I do remember this now.
We started this in like grade 6 or 8. I can't remember.
Okay, I do remember this now. I needed to hear it in that context, and then it brought it back. That I bet that was a throwback for a lot of people. Something interesting I just saw was that it check this, like the performance of a commercial electrolyzer with our catalyst running in seawater is close to the performance of platinum iridium catalyst running in a feedstock of highly purified deionized water. That's DI interesting.
Water. Yeah, I know. I use DI water when I was doing my PhD. Gosh, the 500 mils of DI water cost $60 to $80. And we could make it in our lab too, but the amount of energy we had to spend, we had to do it like we could only make ultra pure water, which is like 1 degree deionization. Completely purified deionization goes to like 3 or 4 cycles, and that's a lot of energy you're spending, and a lot of water you're throwing away in the process. So and then iridium and platinum, they are rare earth, so there's going to be lots of, number 1, blood mining, and number 2, like only a few countries have those things in bulk. So this is pretty good. I mean, this is
I definitely want to know more about this, especially this, because I know that you need platinum. And so, if you could just use seawater, we're definitely going to learn more about this. And unfortunately, it looks like Drea has lost connection. So I'll jump on to the next topic, which is, I've always been taught that hydrogen is the most abundant molecule in the universe. It's the simplest element. And it's abundant. It's literally everywhere and it's in everything. However, it doesn't occur by itself like we see it with water, right? H2O, it's bonded with something else. Well, I saw this last night and I just couldn't believe it. Now they're saying that hydrogen does occur in the earth, and it says, does earth hold vast stores of a renewable carbon-free fuel? And they're basically calling it a gold hydrogen. Apparently you can drill for pure hydrogen that is renewable with no emissions. Now, this just came out, so I don't know how legit this is or how real it is, but it's on science.org, and I'm just curious. And there's, go ahead, Rishav.
No, I'm just like chiming with you.
And so, yeah, here's a quote. It says, when I first heard about it, I thought it was crazy, says Emily Yedinak, a material scientist who devoted a fellowship at the Advanced Research Projects Agency Energy, ARPA-E, to drumming up interest in natural hydrogen. The more that I read, the more I started to realize, wow, the science behind how hydrogen is produced is sound. I was kind of like, why is no one talking about this? But I think that was still talking about production. I want to find where it was talking about them finding it naturally occurring. Okay, see, critically, natural hydrogen may be not only clean, but also renewable. It takes millions of years for buried and compressed organic deposits to turn into oil and gas. By contrast, natural hydrogen is always being made fresh when underground water reacts with iron minerals at elevated temperatures and pressures. In the decades since boreholes began to tap hydrogen in Mali, flows have not diminished, says Prince Hofer, who was consulted on the project. Hydrogen appears almost everywhere as a renewable source of energy, not a fossil one. Now, I just found this last night. I'm mind blown. Why have we not heard or learned about this before?
Maybe just came to my mind immediately just now is that maybe we had hydrogen in those oil wells as well. When those guys basically like drilled those big ass boring machines, they put them in the ground, they basically may have released hydrogen. So all these Middle East countries who are now like scared that their oil is running out, maybe they put hydrogen in the atmosphere and it probably has left the earth now. So
an interesting point, an interesting theory.
Yeah, because when it says that it's a product of decomposition, fossil fuel is a product of decomposition. Like scroll up. There you were saying that like it takes they're organic deposits to turn into oil and gas. So fossil fuel is made in the same process. Pressurized organic deposits form oil. So and natural gas and maybe hydrogen and methane and all that. So maybe we've lost a lot of it that way.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting opportunity for sure. I was reading something, it might even have been in this article. They were talking about the people that got rich off of the gold rush. And it wasn't the people that were digging for gold. Welcome back, Drea, by the way. It wasn't the people that were digging for gold. Oop, and off she goes. It was the people that were building the shovels and the equipment that, and so it's like if there's naturally occurring hydrogen, then an opportunity to really start looking at is how to get that hydrogen and what tools, what materials are going to be needed. That's certainly something that I'm very interested in. What's it saying here? He believes that the Mali discovery might end up in the history books alongside one that happened 160 years ago in Titusville, Pennsylvania. At the time, the world knew about seeps of oil in places such as Iraq and California, but was blind to the vast deposits that lay underground. Then on the 27th August 1859, a nearly bankrupt prospector named Edwin Drake, working in Titusville with a steam engine at cast iron drill pipe, struck black gold at a depth of 21 meters and began collecting it in a bathtub. Wow.
Good old days.
Yeah. And then it goes on. I think we're not very far from that with hydrogen. And you know, and this is exactly why I always say I will never, I will try never to be like, this is the right way to do this, because as soon as you say this is the right way to do something, something better comes along. And so you just have to always keep an open mind and try to stay current. But yeah, we're definitely going to be talking about this more in future episodes. Now, this is interesting. Okay, going to pivot now. Next topic I want to cover is several years ago, there was this, I was fascinated by these, they were like these pellets that were, they basically were so small that when you poured them, they almost flowed like a liquid because the pellets were so small. And so it was very easy to like use them in refueling. It was just theoretical, but you could like refill, they could be, you know, used to refill an aircraft, the fuel. And because they were pellets, they could exist at ambient temperature and pressure. So you didn't have to have an expensive tank or have it stored cryogenically or any of that. And basically, they just needed a little bit of heat to release the hydrogen. And the company, I think it was called like Cella, Cella, or something like that. Cella Energy. Well, I tried to find them. I wanted to get them to be on one of our webinars at HYSKY Monthly. I couldn't find them. Then I found they like got snatched up by NASA and were doing some research, and then they just like disappeared off the face of the earth. So I don't know if it was like kind of, you know, BS technology or if it went into defense or what happened. But then Rishav shows me this article and it sounds very similar. So Rishav, please tell us more about this powder.
Yeah, so one of the things that we at HYSKY we're fascinated with is a better form of hydrogen that can be used more readily and easily in powering our aircraft and powering our motors, to be in a more general sense. So this article really piqued my interest because we talked about solid state hydrogen, one of our HYSKY monthly meetings. This one is another form of solid state, and that's pretty interesting. What the article talks about is a form of hydrogen by a company called Electric Global. It's an Israeli company, and what they've done is made for those people who know about polo, it's a mint with a hole. This is the same. It has the same form. It's a small pellet, torus shaped with a hole, and it's made of potassium. So basically, all you need to do is have a generator. It's connected to a well or a vat or whatever, and it has water. You just throw the pellet in it, and then basically it will release hydrogen. So it is like instantaneous hydrogen. And then so you don't need to carry, those pressurized tanks. You don't need to carry, you don't need to find a place where you have these swap stations for your tanks or like a refueling station. So, you can just carry like a bag which has these pellets. It just needs to be hygroscopic and then preventable, and then you can just like generate hydrogen at will. And what they've done is they've actually spent a lot of money doing this. They have moved from sodium to potassium. But at this point, it's still expensive, but this very, 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 exciting, and it has a lot of potential. If this can be made cheap, then we can make smaller vehicles.
And so the hydrogen is, I guess they're going to explain it right here. So it's bonded.
Yeah.
And so then how do you release the hydrogen? You apply heat. I saw something about water. I don't know if that was the case. And then once you release the hydrogen, do you recycle those pellets and then like put hydrogen back to them?
I mean, the potassium, it's a salt, right? So the salt you can just take back and recharge it.
Right.
So it's
Recharging,
like
meaning adding hydrogen back to it.
yeah. So it's
Mhm.
like the aluminum
Oh,
air
here they just did it right
batteries.
there.
Have you do you know about the aluminum air batteries?
Yes.
Yeah, so it's pretty much like that. So the aluminum air batteries, when you use it, the aluminum in the battery get, it's destroyed, but then you get aluminum, and that aluminum can be recharged. So like you can be taken back and then recharged, and you can make the anode again, and then you can make another aluminum battery.
This is
So
interesting. Okay, so they add
yeah.
water, the
Mm,
the oxygen bonds to the potassium, and
mm.
what's this B?
It's boron.
Thank you. I'm rusty on chemistry. It's been a while.
It's potassium borate,
Okay,
basically.
gotcha. And then off it goes.
Yeah.
Very cool. Okay, interesting. And then this is being done in Israel?
Yeah. I mean, Israel is an amazing land. They are genius people over there doing lots of amazing stuff.
I like theirs as easy to use as detergent. That's a
Mm,
good analogy because it gives you I guess it kind of lets you visualize the size of the pellets or what to expect. And I've always been really excited about that particular technology because it was, it sounded really easy. It didn't require a bunch of, complicated
right.
equipment.
Yeah, and then there was a few years ago there was an article where they were absorbing, and this was in the UK. They were absorbing hydrogen on top of nano material, like spherical nano material, and they had, it worked really well in the lab, but then the downside was that it is very expensive. Nobody's going to use a nanomaterial fuel, right?
Yeah.
Uh, unless you have like money like the Defense Department or NASA or in those
Tony
missions. But
Stark.
Yeah, Tony
yeah,
Stark.
yeah. So
Exactly.
nobody will use that kind of thing in their day-to-day lives. So this is a welcome change, definitely.
For sure. Well, we're about out of time. But thank you all so much for being with me on episode 1. Dabin, Drea, Rishav. It was a pleasure. And thank you all for watching. Make sure to catch episode 2. And if you want to see these get better quality, you can make a donation and fund us. Because right now this is unscripted. We're winging it and we're using our computers and laptops. But hey, it's the content that matters, right? So yeah, thanks everybody for joining in, and we'll see you next time.
See you. Bye.